to another episode of Mentally Somewhere Else. In today's episode, we will be discussing the key question of, in what ways can public opinions affect government policy?
We will also be discussing our thoughts on this chapter overall, while going over some important keywords.
First off, Americans express their opinions at the ballot box. Between elections, officials want to know what the public is thinking. Over the years, the methods and technology to access and tabulate public opinion have changed. Elected officials use a number of sources or channels to stay in touch with public opinion, such as political parties and interest groups, mass media, letters, emails, or faxes, straw polls, which we'll explain and define later, and political websites, social networking sites, and blogs, just to name a few.
Party organizations have long been a reliable source of information about public opinion. In the past, party officials were in close touch with voters in their hometowns, cities, counties, and states. The mass media often reflect public attitudes fairly well because they speak to a broad audience. Newspapers, magazines, and television and radio programs reflect the interests of the public.
Yeah, so for example, if a news program gets higher audience ratings by covering a certain issue, or if a particular story goes viral, those are indications of strong public interest in those issues. Elected officials keep an eye on headlines, magazines cover stories, editorials, radio talk shows, and the lead story on television newscasts such as Today or Good Morning America, in which news goes viral on the internet.
If you are wondering what an indication is, it's something that tells or points out, such as a sign or symbol. So, Jenna, why don't you point out some ways interest groups stage certain things?
I sure will, Haven. Today, interest groups often stage massive email campaigns where people can sign up online to send a standardized email to their elected officials. Many officials give such letters less attention than personal letters from individual
constituents.
In general, people are more likely to contact legislators by email than written letter. This allows citizens to react almost immediately on an issue. Legislators, too, can use electronic means to quickly respond to a citizen concerns via Twitter, Facebook, or other social networking sites.
Whoa, hold on.
What now, Haven?
Random question, but have you ever heard of a straw poll?
Like pulling a straw out of a giant bucket?
No. A straw poll is an unscientific attempt to measure public opinion.
Oh, so like when newspapers, TV shows, radio stations, and websites ask their audiences to vote on different questions. So like they might ask, should the mayor run for re-election? And then that's when they publish the votes.
Yes, exactly. Straw polls do not use scientific procedures to choose the respondents. Instead, the people who respond to a straw poll have chosen to respond voluntarily. Because the people who take the poll self-select, straw polls are always a biased sample of the population.
Oh, okay, I think I get it, but what do you mean by biased sample?
A biased sample is, in polling, a group that does not accurately represent the larger population.
Oh, okay. So to finish out the discussion on bias sampling, basically, elected officials and their staff keep track of opinions about current issues expressed on political websites and blogs, as well as social networking sites. Reviewing the discussions on such sites help officials gauge what an important segment of the public thinks about issues and can alert leaders to emerging problems that they have yet to be covered by traditional mass media.
But wait, what are the 3 simple steps to follow a straw poll?
Oh yeah, I almost forgot that part. Scientific polling involves 3 basic steps. 1. Select a sample of the group to be questioned. 2. Present carefully worded questions to the individuals in the sample. And 3 is interpreting the results of the polls.
Moving on from that idea, let's talk about something else.
Okay, like what?
I don't care, but let's take a break. I'm hungry.
Oh, I know. Let's talk about sampling.
Is it going to make me more hungry?
Not that kind of sampling, silly.
Okay, then what kind?
Poll sampling. In conducting polls, the group of people that is to be studied is called the universe. A universe might be all the seniors in a high school, all the people in the state of Texas or Indiana, or all the women in the United States. Since it is not possible to actually interview every single person in Texas or Indiana or any state, or every woman in the United States, pollsters question a representative sample, a small group of people who are typical of that certain universe.
Such a small group is representative because pollsters use random sampling, a technique in which everyone in that universe has an equal chance of being selected. Telephone interviews are used in many national polls. To create a random sample, pollsters use random digit dialing. They select an area code and the first 3 local digits. Then a computer randomly chooses and dials the last 4 digits. The drawbacks to telephone interviews are that pollsters might fail to research the person being called, and that people might refuse to answer the questions. The rapidly growing use of cell phones has complicated these procedures, and according to some experts, has made such polls less reliable.
Okay, so with that and other things, a sampling error is a measurement of how much the sample results might differ from the sample universe. Sampling error decreases as the sample size increases. If a poll says that 65% of Americans favor tougher pollution laws with a 3% sampling error, that means between 62 and 65% of the entire population favors such laws.
At times, pollsters adjust or weigh the results of a poll to overcome defects in sampling. Pollsters may adjust a poll to take into account variations in race, gender, age, or education. For example, if pollsters found that not enough Americans over the age of 65 were interviewed, they might give extra weight to the opinions of the senior citizens who were interviewed.
So do you like it?
Like what?
You know, it.
Jenna, you aren't being very clear.
I think I'm being clear.
But poll questioning must be clearly worded so there is no confusion. Each question should ask only one thing. Questions that include too many elements produce results that are harder to interpret. For example, a poll might include the question, do you think the current tax laws are fair and easy to understand? If the respondent answers no, the pollster does not know whether the respondent thinks the tax code is unfair, hard to understand, or both.
Polling questions take many forms. In a common type of question, the pollster reads a statement such as, I agree with the president's views about raising taxes on wealthy people. The pollster then asks the respondent to answer one of the following responses: strongly agree, disagree, strongly disagree, or no answer.
Scientific polling has improved since its first use in the 1930s. Polling is never completely accurate. However, pollsters can't be sure that the people they are interviewing are being completely honest. There may also be unanticipated sampling errors. Still, major polling organizations have learned how to conduct polls that are generally reliable within a few percentage points.
When someone interprets a poll, it is important to know the sampling error. For example, during the 1976 presidential race, one poll said that Jimmy Carter was behind President Ford by 48% to 49%. With a sampling error of plus or minus 3%, Carter could have been ahead. As it turned out, Carter won the election. Similarly, in the 2012 presidential election, a certain poll conducted the night before the election showed that Romney ahead by a single percentage point, but Obama ultimately won the election by close to 4 percentage points.
Other important factors interpreting poll results are who paid for the poll, who responded, and how well the questions were written. Sponsors of polls might ask the pollsters to focus on surveying people with a bias. For example, a poll of a dog owner is likely to result in less favorable opinions of leash laws than a poll of the general population. Sometimes, political parties or interest groups intentionally write questions that they hope will produce the results they want.
So, for example, respondents might be asked, if you know that President, say, X, who is running for mayor, has 72 unpaid parking tickets. Would that change your opinion of them as a candidate? When the wording of questions push respondents to a particular answer view, it is called push polling. Push polls are not regarded as legitimate polls by pollsters. However, the results are often presented as if the polls were legitimate. Thus, it is important to look behind results to the questions and sponsor.
Okay, so how do public officials and the media use polling data?
I'm glad you asked, David. Public officials use polls in a variety of ways. Polls that use constituents who hold strong views on one side of an issue may prompt a lawmaker to introduce a bill on the issue or sway a lawmaker's vote on a related bill. Candidates for office use polls to help them decide where to campaign and where to advertise most heavily. Polls may also help them shape their messages.
Considering public opinion when making decisions is a good idea, but government officials can go too far in if their use of public polling data. For example, if lawmakers change positions as public opinion changes, they might be criticized for waffling, failing to have any principles that guide their work. Similarly, a presidential candidate will be criticized if his or her message changes too much from place to place in response to polling data.
The media also uses polling data. They report poll results as news, especially during election season. Citizens who enjoy following the campaigns as they would sports teams closely track poll results. While other media consumers may complain about the constant reporting of poll results, their own views may be shaped by what they hear via the media. Some citizens may even decide not to vote if polls indicate when one candidate has a large lead.
Jenna, I'm ready to leave this talk. You said a few minutes ago we would go eat.
Okay, Haven, we still have one more thing to talk about. Exit polls. Exit polls involve interviewing voters as they leave the polling sites and ask them for whom they voted. In presidential elections, the television networks have used exit polls to predict who has won a particular state. Often, these predictions are made before the polls close in western states. If the predictions suggest what one candidate is well on the way to victory, voters in the West may decide not to vote because, the West is 3 hours behind.
Mm-hmm.
When some projections based on exit polls turn out to be wrong, as they were in 2000, criticism of the media's use of exit polls increase.
Okay, so can we exit and go take a poll on where to eat?
Your jokes are the worst, but whatever.
Well, this has been Haven and Jenna talking and discussing the topic of government and polls.
Catch us next week as we discuss a new topic. Hey! Alright, start over.
You want to start over?
No, okay. I meant you start there.
Oh, you want me to?
Sure.
If you were wondering what an indication is, it is something that tells... We have to
keep an eye on headlines, magazine cover stories, editorials, radio talk shows, and